All right, I'm Dr. Bill Johnson. I'm superintendent of schools. I think we're all here today for the same reason. We're hurting. It started on Friday, and it has extended right through the entire weekend and right through today. For those of you who have children in the high school, I think you know the extent to which they have been able to lean on one another, help one another, and it has brought us together in ways in which I could never have imagined. We had to help our children, help one another, and without further ado, really, I would like to introduce you to Noreen Leahy, who will then introduce our speaker, and I'll thank you in advance. And this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Yeah, we are very fortunate today to have with us Dr. Max Ben Elie. He's associated with the Well Life Network and has some 35 years experience in the field of suicide pre and postvention. He's considered one of the nation's experts, and he's been a friend to the district for some years now, and I am very proud and very happy that he's here today with us to talk to us a little bit in the aftermath of this tragedy. Dr. Ben Elie?
I think I'm connected, right? Yes? I think, yeah. Is that one off? Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you for having me here. I'm sorry to be here after a tragic loss of a young person in your community. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to be able to talk to each other about the feelings we have, the questions we have, and importantly, what to do in terms of what are some of the things we can do in terms of going forward, in terms of helping the community at large, but more specifically to help the youth, regardless of how old they are. So I'm going to say a few words with regard to what we know about suicide and about youth and their thoughts about suicide, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time to entertain some of your questions, because I understand there are some cards circulated around, so if you like, you can write those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Let's start by saying that suicide is a tough topic to talk about for everyone, not just young people, but grown-ups. Many grown-ups avoid talking about it or find euphemisms as a way of addressing what is a very sudden and tragic loss, and it pains everybody in the community. It makes everybody think, because it leaves a lot of people with questions. So we want to talk a little bit about youth and suicide. It's relevant here, but also as a way of us having some sort of a common denominator for our conversations. What we have found out through research, through some of our experiences, is that young people thinking about suicide is not really an unusual phenomenon. We know that young people as young as 8 or 9 years old, or even younger, have thought about suicide. And in fact, sadly enough, we know that some elementary school kids have killed themselves by suicide. We also know that thinking about suicide is not really unusual in a sense that people do not have to have a mental illness to think about suicide. Does that come as a surprise to you? No, good. I'm glad to hear. Now I can go home now. You don't have to necessarily be depressed to think about suicide. Does that surprise you? It seems like suicide is part of the human condition in the sense that any of us, and yes, all our young people and youth in our society, if things do not go the way we want them to go, we get disappointed, we get upset, and when enough of those things go wrong, some of us think about suicide. It's the same with our young people. We don't know necessarily who and how it happens exactly, but we know that when hardship comes, people get overwhelmed, there's a lot of psychic pain, that people have a tendency to think about suicide. Having said that, then the next question is, then how do we get to talk about it? If it's such a common thing, we know for a fact we don't talk about it openly, do we? Could somebody say why we don't talk about it openly? Shame. What else? I'm sorry?
Scary.
Fear, yes. Yes, it's a scary thought. It's a very scary thought because life is so precious to everyone, every single person. But we know for a fact that when things pile up and overwhelm us, that some of us may think about suicide. Luckily, most of the people, including the young people, that think about suicide do not act on it. That's a good thing. And given that so many young people think about suicide and they do not act on it, gives you and I an opportunity to talk about it, no? But most importantly, young people don't wear a banner and saying, I'm thinking about suicide. They have their own ways, and very creative ways of communicating when they are in trouble, yes? Could we talk about a couple of examples? What do young people do every day? Social media, beautiful. What else? They get angry at their parents, like they don't follow rules, yes? What else? Listen to music, absolutely. What else?
Substance abuse.
I'm sorry?
Substance abuse.
Substance abuse. Isolate themselves. Beautiful. Beautiful. And many, many, many more, right? Our young people are very creative. We know how to get out of going to school, right? Every day if they want to. It's part of us being human beings. So, yes, one of the things we need to do is just kind of be, as we had a meeting before, I said, one of the things we need to do, we need to listen. Listen, you know, tuning in. We need to watch. As many of you, as I assume most of you, parents, you intuitively know when there's something wrong, no? You do, right? And sometimes there are circumstances in life that we become aware of that tell us something may be wrong. So those 4 items guide all of us, and I'm sure many of us are tuned in to other people in a sense of we either hear, see, sense, or we find out about things happening with people in their lives, including our youth. So what are some of the things that we find out about youth, as you said, that concern you and I? Certainly substance abuse is one of them. What else? Isolating was another one, right? I'm sorry? Promiscuity, very good. Suicide games on the internet, beautiful. What else? Self-harm, very good. And you say you're very good at this. You already know there are certain things that are more clearly associated with the possibility. I didn't say for sure, with the possibility that some young person may be thinking about suicide. One of the things that we suggest is that when it comes to interfacing and having a conversation with youth about their possible thoughts of suicide, is that we don't need a lot of information. We don't need to have something stereotypic that, as I said before, that somebody needs to be depressed for us to ask them if they have thought about suicide. In fact, just the opposite. What we say about young people, sometimes they're actually more active, right? So we need to think out of the box. And rather than having guessing games and having people think in a narrow range, we'll say across the board and universally and say, if you're concerned and you're worried about someone, have that conversation with them. And that conversation is a hard one, no? How many of us feel comfortable going to someone that we may know, and some people that we know quite well, that's saying, well, you know, I'm worried about you. I wonder if you have thought about suicide. How comfortable is it? It's not, right? Some people are more comfortable than others. But what if I told you that one way that we're going to attend to many of the youth that we know we have in our communities that are thinking about suicide is for you and I being able to openly and directly talk with them about suicide. What if we said to you that the way you help insulate your young people is by having an open and direct conversation? But if the topic is uncomfortable, we may hesitate to have that conversation. Why do we hesitate?
Fear of suggesting it.
Yes, beautiful. Number one reason, often said, not just by parents, by professionals in the mental health field, that somehow we learned in the past that when you ask youth about suicide, you give them the idea. Our research absolutely negates that. It doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions, but by and large, there is no evidence that talking to young people about suicide encourages them, gives them the idea, or anything to that effect. So if that is the case, and all of us in some ways are obviously tuned in and in tune with our young people over time, what would happen if we have those conversations and we normalize the conversations? The way to normalize it is to bring it up the way we bring up anything else. But because if we don't bring up the topic of suicide like we bring up everything, we continue to reinforce the stigma as though there is something wrong with talking about suicide, and there is something wrong with you which is the worst part of it when it comes to young people, right? So we all need to learn to get more comfortable talking about it and bringing it up when we're not so sure that even suicide may be in the picture. Think about the message we give to our youth if we openly and directly talk about it and give them factual information. We did that with venereal disease, didn't we? We are doing it with HPV, right? Getting vaccination. We're doing it with many things. Why not with suicide? We lost, last time we checked, about 5,000-6,000 young people to suicide. That's way too many. Not because it was somebody's fault. Because life is hard. Growing up is harder than it was before. So we need to think about going forward as to what can we do collectively as a whole, as parents, as school faculty, as community members, and yes, youth themselves. How can we help to build more resiliency in our communities? Because that's what it takes. And we said it before, we said, you know what the young people need more than anything else? To insulate them against thinking that suicide is an option that they want to take. What do you think? Yes?
I agree with that fully.
Okay. I said just, so if you were thinking as to what would be number one on our list of what youth need to insulate them more, we can't be perfect, sadly, but insulate our youth more, what would you say? Definitely education, and that's where the school's about, right? Yes? Learning how to cope, absolutely. They certainly learn some of it in schools, but schools are not the only place to learn that, right? They learn some of it on the streets, with their friends, Friday night at the pizza place, etc. And some of it at home, some of it by themselves. Yes?
Have conversations about reflecting on their week.
Absolutely.
Reflecting on conversations that they have with their peers, different scenarios.
Having conversations about what's hard in life, as well as what's nice in life, the vacation coming up or what have you, but also talking about the things that are hard for our young people now. Yes? Yes?
They need to feel understood.
Yes, 100%. And do you think we always understand our young people? You're the old generation. I'm even an older generation.
I think that kids need to be kinder to each other. And even though we teach kindness and we teach inclusion, I don't think they really practice it like they should.
Okay, I agree. I think that would be good. I'm going to say the word that maybe a lot of, yes? Oh, teaching them resiliency. I think schools are doing some of that, but we need to do more of it, not just putting everything on the schools, because they got the core curriculum to worry about. Yes. 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 I am very pleased to tell you that New York State passed a law in 2016, which is the mental health law, which means, and it was implemented as of July of 2018, correct? That means every school has to have a curriculum in their health curriculum about mental health and mental illness. That's a wonderful thing. That means we're going to have more conversations about what emotional wellness is all about. By the way, I myself am not sure what emotional wellness is about. I'm still trying to figure that out. So what, yes? This is so beautifully said. When you find out how to do it, I want to know about it. This is absolutely true, but it comes with the turf. Developmentally, impulsivity comes with the turf. Yes, some are more impulsive than others. That's only a piece. I want to say this, that suicide, again, is multi-determined and multi-dimensional. We don't want anybody to think it's just one single factor here that caused this or what have you. We never want anybody to think along those lines. Yes?
I think also important for youth is hope. Hope that things are going to change.
Yes. And how are we going to do that? How we're going to just go? We can legislate it. We would want to, but we can legislate it. If I tell somebody and say, don't worry about it. I know you're going to be evicted tomorrow. You lost your job. Nobody loves you. And plus you're sick or what have you. Things are going to get better. I may be the nicest person on the face of the earth. You think that's going to convince someone? What we're finding out, we need to make sure our youth are connected. When it comes to suicide, both youth and adults who are more connected, and connections mean something a little bit different for different people, that statistically and research-wise, we have found that connections are extremely important as a way of insulating our young people against not thinking about it, but planning and executing plans to kill themselves. Connections. So one task in front of us is, how do we make sure we're not silos? We're interconnected. It's not them and us. We're all raising the kids together, right? We're just doing it in shifts. Schools do it during the day, and we do it at night and weekends. It's a partnership, right? It's always been a partnership. How do we create the connections for them in a way that insulates them more? And that's part of resiliency, is the connection. Young people very often know where to go when they're in trouble. Not always, but where do they go? Their friends. I was teaching, it was like speed dating. I went to one of the schools. I had class after class talking to the students in her health classes. And I asked, if you were in trouble, you were feeling bad or stressed and stuff, who do you go to? Unanimously, friends. Not parents, not school psychologists, not grandma, friends. So it doesn't make sense for us to think about how to help the youth themselves to be part of the solution. Yes, that makes sense? And we have trainings, we have education for youth as a way of doing that. So to be proactive, to put certain things in place in the community, in the schools, etc., as a way of creating a more of a caring, compassionate community, that the message consistently is, if you're going through hard times, this is a number you can call. If you're going through a hard time, this is a place where you can possibly go. Because it's not really if, because all of us go through hard times, no? But we are all somehow handle it, no? Some of us in a more healthy way, some of us not so healthy way. I was telling the others, and I said, you know, those margaritas and daiquiris and etc. sometimes help. Does this make sense so far? Yes? So how do we talk to our youth about something that is so hard for you and I to talk about? How do we model and become mentors for them for something that is so challenging in 21st century, 2019, you and I still have a hard time to openly talk about suicide. If we have such a significant number of youth that may have thought about suicide, and they're still here, isn't that an opportunity? Because I can tell you, statistically, there are hundreds and hundreds of students in our schools, in our communities, that have thought about suicide. It's not rare. Maybe we want to think it's rare, but it's not rare. In fact, it's rather common. But the good thing about it is many young people think about suicide and life happens and good things happen and the thought fades until something else bad happens, right? Yes? You're 100% right. And New York State finally listened. So the curriculum speaks about some of those things, as at least there's an opportunity to have conversations about those things. Because you and I, my mood, by the way, is not the same all day long. It depends on the traffic. Yes?
So it most certainly is integrated into the curriculum, but could you talk to us a little bit about day-to-day conversations maybe parents could have in a house when a student is maybe stressed out or anxious about something happening in their lives, as opposed to having some type of a pervasive anxiety condition, and what parents can do to talk to them about the difference.
Great. Did everybody hear Dr. Leahy? Yes? Okay. Your voice carries nicely. The comment or question was, or statement was that, and how do we as parents, as adults, talk to youth when they are overstressed? Are any students that you know are stressed? It's given, no? Or any students that you know that once in a while they feel sad or disappointed? So the question becomes how to maybe start that conversation. Yes?
Acknowledging what I feel and saying, I know it's hard, or I know it stinks that you got cut, or you didn't make the play, or just saying, I get it. I get it.
Well, that's a wonderful way of validating feelings. Yes, absolutely.
You know that it's okay to fail.
And it's okay to fail.
They don't have to be perfect.
You don't,
And
absolutely.
they don't understand that they can fail. Because we as society don't think that that's okay to let them do that either.
Right. Very good. Okay. Yes.
Appropriately modeling your own feelings and how you deal with them?
Absolutely. That's very powerful because you're so important to your young people. Anybody else?
I had
Yes.
a couple of moms ask me, what do they say to their kids? Their kids asking them questions. So how do I even respond to my little kids that are already, know about what's happening? She said, I don't know what to say to them.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
As a parent of 4 children in each level, elementary, high school, college, and a former health teacher, and I did talk about mental health even, I guess, before it was a law.
Right. Yes.
To the curriculum. This goes back 20 years. I think, and the teachers do a great job, the administrators, what a horrible situation they've been put in where they have to act, in a sense, as parents, as young people in our absence during the day. They need mentors. I had my degree K through 12. I taught in high school.
Right.
I said, when would they ever put health into kindergarten? We think that they don't need it, all of a sudden that they need it in middle school. Where is we talk about maturation in 5th grade, and then where is the continuation of this? It should be every year.
Right.
Not talking about that everybody's the best, but everybody gets coaching and all of that, but where is it that, like she said, people can fail, and it's okay, and these expectations of it, the weight, the responsibility on them, and then the social media where it looks like everybody else has it all together.
Right.
It's so widely faceted, and as
Absolutely.
a child that has extreme anxiety beginning in the middle school, and it comes out of nowhere, and it can rock your world, and you wonder, people talk about illness, and you wonder, is it going to get better? Is there going to be a light? They don't necessarily see the next day
Correct.
how that sun is going to come up again.
Right.
And I think a mentor for everyone, as much as we as parents think that we can help them, sometimes that outside mentor, someone to connect with, like you said,
Right.
is so important.
We're already working on some of those things through some of the youth programs that we have, that is kind of a mentorship. But also some of the schools are looking at kind of some key people, not necessarily mental health professionals, but key people that youth, like a gym teacher as an example, or a health teacher, or what have you, or someone. Believe it or not, sometimes youth are more comfortable with the security guard at the door. They shoot the breeze about the football game. When they come in, they know more about that person than sometimes others, simply because they don't share those things with other folks. But thank you for sharing that.
I'm sorry, a lot in my head, but can I also add, we also get to the high school level where we say lunch is optional. This is
Right.
time. Why is lunch optional?
Right.
Why are we saying fill your schedule up with academics as much as you can?
Right. Thank you. I assume you were talking to the choir here. Let's, in the interest of time and trying to entertain some questions, go back to Dr. Leahy's point, is that I think what we're kind of alluding to, and we're trying to say it more explicitly, is that when things happen and things don't go right, is an opportunity to talk about what's going on. And it's up to us to come forward with saying to the youth that sometimes when people go through a hard time, when young people when students go through a hard time, sometimes they think about suicide. We need to plant that piece into our conversation. It doesn't mean that every single young person is going to take us up and talk about it, but we're planting the seed. It's important for us across the board, plant this seed by normalizing those conversations, because I, as a young person, want to know that if this thing that nobody talks about, this thing that is very scary, there are people that are actually open and comfortable talking about it. And most important, there are people actually that they really want to talk about it. And the way they tell me is that to say, I know sometimes a lot of people think about suicide. I apologize for it. I always like to bring it in the here and now. I know for a fact at least 1 out of 20 of us in this room has thought about suicide. It's life. It's part of our human condition. So it's real. It happens. The young people are there. So we do have opportunities now to have conversations, having open conversations, mentioning the word suicide. It is hard to talk about, but it's something that we need to talk about it. We need to talk about this. Or the young people are coming home, obviously they have heard about what tragic loss that you went through, and saying, how do you feel about it? I went through this thing that school had for the parents. I heard that actually many young people think about suicide. What do you think? It's an opportunity to have a conversation with your young people. And again, don't expect them to want to talk about it then. It's all about planting seeds and going forward. Right? Yes?
What do you do if your child, where's the next conversation? Where do you run to? If my child said yes, I'd be beside myself. I would be calling, where do you go next with that conversation? What's the next, it's okay that you thought about it? Like, what's the next piece?
Well, you know what? This is one of the things I was in New York City talking to people who are mental health professionals, and they were talking about how scary it is when they find out all these people are thinking about suicide in their workplace, and they get overwhelmed. And I said to them, you know what? One of the things, about 1.5 million Americans today are thinking about suicide. 1.5 million. Minimum. 700,000 or 800,000 Americans tried to kill themselves last year. You know what they all had in common, or have in common? Anyone? What do you think they all have in common? Yes. Yes. I like that. That 4-letter word really counts a lot, doesn't it? Yes. Anybody else? Yes. Maybe. Yes. Not all. But yes, a very good point. Anybody else?
Hopelessness, yeah.
Yes.
What did they say?
Hopelessness. Anybody else? I'm sorry? Yes, psychic pain, absolutely. I'm gonna, I finally have to give you the answer. Since nobody mentioned it, I have to give you the answer. What they all have, a few million people in America today, they have in common is that they're all still here.
Still here.
Yes? Is that a fact? They're all still here. So I'm going to come to you. So all the young people that we have in our schools, that we know for a fact they are thinking about suicide, and they may not be coming to anybody in school or even at home and talking about it, one thing for sure, they're still here. It's an opportunity for you and I to have a conversation an open and direct conversation and talking about suicide because it's real. Yes? Right.
And we have a child who says, yes, I thought about it.
Right.
Do we take them to South Nassau and check them in? Do we go to a school psych? Like, what's the next step?
Well, if just you have, I don't know what the resources, in terms of the resources in the community, but somebody engaging you in a conversation is at different levels of it. People talking openly about suicide doesn't mean that they plan to kill themselves right now.
No, but as a community, we're reeling from reaching suicide.
Yes.
We want to make sure that it's not in their head and we want to address it and not
So
let it go by the wayside.
okay, you want to know in terms of if one of the young people shares with you openly and say, I have thought about it, well, now, where do I go next? In terms of, okay, all right. So we can share, we're gonna share a bunch of information with you with regard to the resources in the community that are 24/7, that you can call, that they actually have specialty in terms of talking to young people and walking you through the steps that you need to be taking. This is provided that it's not an immediate risk. If you find a young person or somebody that is planning to kill themselves or in the process of executing a plan, you call, of course, the police, yes. But we're not talking about that situation. We're talking about a situation that is not an immediate risk. So when it's not an immediate risk, those resources are available and we're going to make them available to you. That in terms of the numbers where you can call. And certainly you can take the person to the emergency room because they make an evaluation whether there's more risk than the person is sharing with you. And then based on that, they make connection and linkages to community resources, including mental health agencies. Did you have anything specific about that aside from the resources?
No, it's a general question, but that was really what we were asking, or what I was asking is if we're engaging in these open conversations and you uncover something, what is, if it's not an immediate risk, someone that's in an attempt,
Yes.
what is the next thing to do?
Okay.
Go to a school psychologist, do you reach out privately? But obviously we want to make sure that we're addressing it in a way, because to me as a parent, anything's an immediate risk. If I have a child.
Yes, it is. Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. So we're going to get those immediate numbers that are 24/7s to you, and all the different type of resources that exist, graded by maybe the severity and how worried you are about, because you will be worried regardless. Yes. Yes.
I'm kind of getting the sense that you're saying that this is a common thought, and that it's a conversation that you need to have with them.
Yes.
But then, as a parent, to us, that's a little bit of an alarming thought. You know, if our child.
It's scary.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Right. So I guess you're saying there's a rating scale or something that we should be looking at in regard to it.
There are resources that are different kinds of resources that we're going to share them. They're going to come home, they're going to be sent to you that have to do with more immediate ones, and there are other ones, and if you need to talk to somebody right now, who do you call? And those could be available to you. Those are 24/7 numbers, yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. And let's say one of us has a conversation with our child and our child says, yes, mom, or yes, dad, I have been thinking about it, I have thought about it, but I'm not going to do it. Or do we, I would think as a parent, I would want to continue to talk to them
Yes.
if they wanted to, and continue to bring it up in the future as well.
Yes.
Just to touch base and make sure that it's still something that isn't a plan or
Correct.
to be executed.
Correct. And I think we're gonna actually do more of these things to help you with regard to the specifics of next step, and what do you do, what if this and that, and so on. You're going to find more and more that they have thought about it, but they don't necessarily have a specific plan. They really do not want to die, and so there's an opportunity. So you and perhaps hopefully the school and your young person and so on collectively and say, okay, what's the best way to address this? And sometimes is to go to a mental health agency or a private practitioner to address it so the thoughts do not persist, right? Yeah.
Just jump in. I just want to also, we're trying very hard to get the names and the faces and the numbers and the contact information of our people, personnel, staff out in as many places as we can. And that certainly, I would encourage you very strongly, if there's any questions or concerns at all about a conversation you had at school with your child, if you any cause of concern, please let our school psychologists or social workers or school counselors know. If the gravity of the situation is such that their child would have to be referred out, and certainly those resources that our PTS staff have, they can help you to kind of point you in the right direction. We also have been trying to send out some information to resources to you so that you can please kind of open up these resources and read them, because there's some good information that if your child is using language that scares you, disturbs you, thinks that someone else needs to win, you at least will have the initial language to use to respond in time. There might be a need for that evening in your home, and then you don't want to wait for the next one to call the school. But certainly anything that you're concerned about should be on the radar at school. We should hear about it. We should know about that. Then our eyes and ears are on it as well.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like part of what you're saying is that you want to start this conversation so the kids know that they're not alone.
Correct.
And that if you start to say like, oh, wow, we have had a thought about it, you know, that's common for people. A lot of people feel that way. And know that there are things we can do if we keep on having these thoughts.
Or even the fact that I thank you for sharing this with me. This is important. I want to know about this. This matters, so we want to continue to talk about this. And if we need to get some help with this, help is available. Yes.
I think these are all super helpful tools, but as a parent, it's scary to think, what about the child that's not coming forward and saying, I'm thinking about this, or the child that doesn't appear to be in crisis?
Right.
I think those are more of the answers that I'm looking for, what to look for, because I think that a lot of these kids are hiding that, and they're not necessarily reaching out or talking to others about the pain that they're in before it's too late.
Well, that definitely happens from time to, but bring up the topic at least gives a signal that you're willing to talk about it. They may not be ready to talk about it at the time. And those who are silent, there's information, we share information all the time. And the schools may, and other places where there's written material that young people see actually and read about, and not necessarily in a conversation with someone. So it gives them some information to think about and ponder over, including some resources that are available to them that they can call. There are online things, and there are that on their phone that they can go to. We're going to make all of that available to you. There are bad resources, but your point is well taken. There is, we're suggesting certain things to be done as a way of opening the conversation and normalizing it and taking the stigma away. And then, depending on what the answer is, and if there's no answer, it doesn't mean you should drop it. If because you're concerned, and if you're worried about something, you continue to express that worry. And if you're really worried about someone, then you consult with some professionals about what to do next with regard to that, yeah.
So one of the things that we spoke about earlier is that children most likely don't open up to their parents, but they will.
They may not. Some do, yes.
But they would likely, if they're in despair, go
Right.
to their parents. So there's a conversation that starts at home, and we're hoping that that's going to open up to the school
Right.
body at large, and
Right.
they will be able to have those conversations. So
Right.
that if they're in trouble, a friend may notice and raise them.
Yes, yes. They are, the older, I'm sorry? It may take a while, but you'll be surprised. Some that they haven't spoken to someone, we find out they readily actually acknowledge Sometimes if they haven't spoken to someone, but somebody approaches them, they actually talk about it. Yes?
How young do you start the conversation?
You can, in elementary school, you can start, in upper elementary school, you can start the conversation.
8, 9, 10?
Yes, yes, by 10, absolutely. In terms of, if you have any concern, you can have that conversation. There is some literature to share with you. We can share with regard to having the conversation. This by no means becoming an alarmist, right? You all have good intuition and so on, know your children. But when you're not sure about something, what we're saying, just at least ask, and ask directly about what's going on with them, and have in the back of your mind, in some situations, may have thought about suicide. Yes, in the back.
There's so many children that are mourning their friends and their classmates. What about those children? How do we talk to them about the immediate loss and their questions of why? Why does this happen? I know earlier you said it's multifaceted.
Right.
But I don't think that a 17-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 9-year-old can understand that. Is there something that we can do?
I think the schools, I defer to Dr. Leahy in terms of doing with the young people themselves with regard to the ones that are hurting, in terms of what is being done, or what the plans are with regard to school. And
Right. The schools have been open all weekend so that kids could come in and process their feelings. They have been open in the Commons room all day today. There were pupil personnel staff on duty all day for the kids to talk. They could freely leave their classes and go in there and sign in and speak, either just to each other or to a professional, depending on how they feel. Were you asking about specific language that you could use with your child? Okay, I think it is a partnership. So I think that's what the question is, Dr. Ben Elie, is, what can a parent say to their child to make them understand the loss of a friend?
First of all, there's literature available online. We're going to send that to you. But I think first engaging and assessing their own feelings, and to share that with you is the first step. Because there are always feelings. We know for a fact it's not that even if they didn't know the particular Jameson, that indeed they're right, okay, and Ryan, just that there are absolutely feelings because they're one unit. So there are always feelings. So you can almost make that assumption and go forth and let them explain it further and give you more detail about it. Yes, so let me just go there and come back.
How do you handle the issue of copycats? So let's set our community aside.
Right.
And let's just look at Parklands. There's 2 in 1 week.
Right.
So if I'm a kid who's marginalized, or I'm a kid who feels victim, or what do I do now? I'm everybody's best friend on social media. There's tributes, there's GoFundMe, or you tend to romanticize or make it. The kid that wasn't hurt is suddenly the face of the town.
Right.
So pediatric psychiatric care it sucks everywhere. I don't care what anyone says. You can walk into Zucker Hill, South Nassau. I know from experience. It's not good. It is a problem. It's the kid that's going to walk in and talk to someone is not the kid that's afraid to walk in and talk to someone. So what are we doing as a community to expand the mental health? That it's in gym. It's mandatory that they're talking about it, because the social media and the isolation and the suddenly the not heard is heard is a tremendous issue that we have to address. And as a parent, I think I'm probably far beyond what most people talk about. And so to get that other mentor, to get that other person, and this is a systemic issue that it's more than just a family. I mean, I push the burden back on the school. I think more has to be done for everyone, because this is tragic, and this is copycat in a violent way. Yeah. So yes. I really am going to push back to the district.
Well,
more has to be
let me tell you something. Let me tell you about something we started actually a while back, and it's going on. And in collaboration, we've been meeting at each county and with some stakeholders to look at that very issue. You're absolutely right. We do not have enough mental health services in the community to address the needs of the community. You're 100% right. So we're trying to look into that in terms of from multiple angles as to what we can do, including schools, including mental health professionals, including hospitals, including private practitioners, to look at this and seeing what we can come up with, which will have more resources, more of a safety net that we can create for all the young people, as well as the community members at large. So we have already started that process. I think everybody agrees with you that there's insufficient and inadequate services in our communities when it comes to attending to mental health issues.
But what's the acute response today? That's where I look to. I guess systemic, we could bring in things, whatever, but how does it help the kids that are hurting today? That's where.
Today in Southside High School?
Today.
I'm going to give the microphone to Mr. Murphy, and he's going to talk about the day today.
Hi. So the day today, there's a short term and a long term, and in the immediate short term now is about comfort, healing, and getting the kids through what is for many of them the first time in their life that they've lost someone this close to them, especially a friend. Which is why the Commons Room and the counseling rooms have been converted and over to safe places for them to talk and them to decide the discourse method, whether it's with a friend or with a healthcare professional. We've also obviously been attuned to families who have been sending us names and say, do me a favor, check in on this person, check in on that person. And as Dr. Ben Elie said, sometimes our best resources are also the students. We've also pushed into physical education classes to begin and continue that overt conversation about mental health, mental illness, and the need to be more overt and transparent about that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a middle schooler, 8th grader, and I just want to know what's being done here, because when she came home on Friday, I knew she was going to have an illness. I said, how did you find out? Whispering in earth science, nothing was addressed to them. And they're all talking about it, and a lot of the girls in 8th grade danced with her, and I think she was like having a hard time understanding how it was just life was going on. And I want to know, what are we doing for the middle schoolers that are 2 years apart in age, and they're all on Instagram, and they're all talking about it.
Okay.
I know things are being done at the high school level.
Well, at the risk of throwing myself under the bus, I mean, even at the high school, we ran into communications issues based on the fact that it's 2019. You know, we're privy to this information by 7 o'clock. We're in triage mode. There's an immediate circle that we want to get to because they're in crisis and they're going to find out. I'm talking 30 minutes. And in 30 minutes, I'm never going to be faster than social media. So I'm trying to maintain the interpersonal, and it's not me, I'm saying me, the collective, the team. We're reaching out, and then all of a sudden it's 250, and I have, I'm not being, I guess I am being defensive, but we're doing the best we can, so I can't speak directly to the middle school, but it's distributing that information. There are do's and don'ts that the health professionals tell us. For instance, never make a public PA announcement, ever, for a lot of really good reasons. So the antithesis is, all right, so I'll tell the teachers and they'll come in. So I have a chemistry license or an English license, and now I'm going to be a healthcare professional for 27 students. Is that a can of worms that I'm equipped to open? So we're navigating that at the same time, not hurting kids. First, do no harm, right? And then, because the kids are going to start to emote, and that, we don't want to negate that, right? So.
Can I just say this? This is unfortunately not the first time very recently, right?
Right.
So we did have a little bit of time to sort of prepare, and if you do talk to the kids, the first thing that they would say is the adults weren't talking about it before, and maybe, yes, now we're talking about it, but I think that the communication line, he said the most important thing was that adults don't want to talk about it, and we didn't want to talk to our kids about it, and we didn't want to address it as a community, and you guys didn't want to address it as a school. Unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where this is where we are today.
We agree.
So we definitely need, I think you're doing
suicide, then how do we expect our children to understand and realize the terror that suicide causes to everybody around them in the community? For all the years of my life, anybody who has committed suicide has been hush, hush, don't say anything about it, and it's gotten us nowhere. We're in a worse place than we were 20 years ago. And I don't know if I go against the experts, but the parents need to have that communication with their kids. It's not as simple as that, but if you can talk to your kid about suicide and explain to them how, yes, you're feeling desperate, but there is a light at the end of that tunnel, and if you can convince them that that's not the right thing to do because it's traumatic to every person they know in their life and what it does to them, it destroys people around them, then maybe they can have that feeling that that's not the way I want to go, because I don't want to hurt the people that I love and love me. I want to find another way to go. But we as a community, we need to talk about suicide and not say he or she died. We need to say he or she committed suicide and it was a terrible choice they made and it destroys so many lives. Don't do that. I think through it all, that's a simplifying the message. I'm sorry. They always shut us out as parents, and that's just a fact of life. But we need to teach them or give them the tool that they can break that vow of silence, reach out to an adult who maybe can step in and make a difference and make something stop. And it really is a simple, not a solution, a simple look at something, but maybe it gives them time then to seek a counselor or guidance or someone help. Then all those other resources then can fall into place. But in our case, it was an instant thing. We had no inkling. So having all the resources to go to wouldn't avail us of anything. It was that minute that somebody, one of his friends heard, if they reached out, that could have made a difference, may not have. But we really need to break the stigma of talking about suicide, and that we have to teach our kids. You need to start reaching out to the adults in the room to maybe help you. Maybe it goes against what you think, but in certain things, it's the only way to move forward and help somebody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I go somebody there and then come to you? And somebody was there.
I just wanted to say that, I'm a parent and I'm a social worker, and I find that a lot of kids don't even know the words to describe how they're feeling. And so sometimes it just takes some time to speak with them, to hear them. I think as parents, oftentimes we talk to our kids and tell them to do this or to do that. And I think just taking a moment just to hear them out, tell me more about that. Tell me what happened today, what's going on. I have a 5-year-old and I tell him, he's a little bit of a troublemaker himself, but I tell him, Nico, if you see someone crying, what do? Mommy, I go over to them, I talk to them, I see if they're okay. If you can't help them, where can you go? I go and I bring them to the teacher. I think we really have to understand how we can empower children. Children are change makers. And I think we've drilled so much academia in their brains rather than about humanity. And I think if we re-engage our young people to be change makers and to help people bring them to the social worker or to the psychologist, I think we will find ourselves in a better place. And I just want to say this, I know for kids and for parents, you're all going to have that feeling of shoulda, woulda, couldas, and what ifs. And you have to put those away because nothing is going to change the outcome that has already happened. And so in order to move forward, just keep having the conversations. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You
So I think you raise a very important point. We have to have the conversation. We have to destigmatize the conversation. I think the parents here, most of us in this room, even if we didn't want to have that conversation, we now know we have to have that conversation. And to echo the point made by another parent, so on Friday I came home and sat down with my 2 high school children and started talking about this, and I kept trying to throw my 10-year-old out of the room because talking about suicide was not something I wanted to do with my 4th grade daughter. So I kept throwing her out. She kept lurking and listening, and this morning she came into my bedroom and said, "Mom, I have to find my purple sweatshirt because I have to show solidarity." For Jameson. So we do need to reach out to our elementary school children and to our middle school children to talk about this. But I want to know, is there research on what we can do as a community? What kind of programs work to change the outcome? We know that there are sad kids, and we know that there are so many kids just right here in Rockville Centre who are suffering. What can we do? What steps, what works to try to change the outcome?
Yes, I want to tell you that we've already started that with Mercy Hospital. We already have started, we have had a number of meetings about more of a community-based look, and we're going to include in that a lot of evidence-based, known things that a community can do as a way of becoming more aware and insulating and creating more resiliency at the community level, at the school level, and at the individual level in terms of going forward. So you're more than welcome to be involved in that. That's
that in May.
yes, yes. There you go. There you go.
I think what a lot of the kids, they're communicating with, I know, like the teachers in my school, and they're all talking, and the teachers are listening, and there's lots of things that they're all doing. And I think what's happening is a lot of the kids are not coming home, they're not talking to their parents. They are Snapchatting their feelings. It disappears in 24 hours. I've actually saved a child's life because she Snapchatted, "I'm gonna kill myself." And one of the kids came to us, not to the mother, not to the other parent, came to the teacher, and we went to the parent, you know. I think that some kids are screaming for help, and it really, it makes everybody in a difficult decision because you can't be telling other parents how to raise their children because we've all been raised differently. Like, you know, our parents all told us we walked to school in 20 feet of snow, you know, whatever. I mean, I think, you know, it's just a different day and age. Social media is a big thing. The wearing the purple. I have an 11-year-old daughter too, who I had to explain this to because, and she's not on social media. She did not get a phone for Christmas. She is not getting a phone next year. She's not, but they hear it through their friends, what's going on, and I had to explain it to her. And the way I explained it, and I know someone said before, how do I say this? I had a girl just come into my dance studio and say, I don't know if I can come to dance today. I was in high school all day today, hysterical crying. And I first hugged her, told her I loved her, and then I said to her, you have to be here, because our lives need to go on. She made a bad choice. And as kids, because you guys are kids, we have, you know, sometimes we make bad decisions. As adults, we make bad decisions. So you have to talk about thinking first with your kids, like what are you thinking about? So every night I personally lay with my child, both my children separately, and I ask them my kids spew their feelings out to me left and right. I mean, I am very lucky, I am. And I have a lot of kids at the dance studio that talk to me about everything. But the first thing that I said to all of them Saturday, after they left, I think Southside High School, I think I had like 80 kids at my dance studio Saturday while the parade was on. And the first thing I said to them was, I want to let you know what happened is wrong. What she decided was wrong. It is never okay to hurt yourself, and it's never okay to hurt anyone else. And I think that's the number one thing you have to say. It's not okay. We can't, like, you know, sometimes I think as high school kids, the kids are, they're making it romantic.
For the child who is in pain.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, they're trying to get back.
For the children that were suffering.
There are children that are suffering.
Dr. Clay.
I'll just speak loud. It's a very cliche thing, but we all say it. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think it's our responsibility to give them a sight and then step back in perspective. Not only, you know, was it a bad decision? Why? You know, what did it do? It's like Mr. O'Shea said. You know, they don't realize the impact of their choice is going to make it. It's up to us to say to them,
And I share.
you're not alone. You're not. And this will pass. And you have to trust me in that. And you have to build that trust to have that conversation.
Right.
Do you think she really didn't want to go to the prom? You think she really didn't want to see her sister grow up? But look, in a moment, she lost perspective. Yeah. And we have to give them that perspective.
I just had a question. So every school has an anti-bullying program.
Right.
Why can't there be a suicide prevention program that engages teachers and students on a monthly basis, and then it initiates a conversation? Hopefully, it prevents someone from doing something that month. And hopefully, it initiates conversations between all the students, and they might hear something, or a teacher might hear something. But why can't we initiate that?
Well, I think I'm glad you brought it up. We brought it up with New York State Ed Department, and I said there are sadly we lose more youth to suicide than we lose to bullying. And how come bullying is a regular mandated training and suicide isn't? Unfortunately, I didn't get an answer, but we're actually working on that. But you're on absolutely right, and 100%.
There's a number of programs that, I mean, New York State recognized the issue with mental health being a public health issue.
Right.
One of the first 2 states in the nation to mandate the mental health curriculum that we have, we're developing, and also the social emotional learning programs, many of which have been implemented that are evidence-based, they're research-based throughout our schools. Those programs are the conversation starters about dealing with adversity, about self-confidence, about self-advocacy, about looking out for one another, about kindness and all those other things. To talk about suicide prevention once a month with children, I'm not sure I agree with that. I agree with a concrete conversation. I agree with explicit instruction. I agree with direct answers to direct questions. I agree with all that. But I think the other tools that we have to give our children are in these social emotional programs that are going on day in and day out in these buildings, and the mental health curriculum.
I think that if you had, say, suicide prevention clubs, that you could implement those things with the kids each month. Like, I know I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell my daughter if she hears anything. First thing you said was the kids know, the parents don't. Well, first thing I'm going to go home and say to my daughter, if you hear anything, if you see anything, if someone tells you anything, if you don't tell me, tell somebody. Tell your older brother, let him tell somebody.
Good.
I think that a suicide prevention club would help these kids get through these things. It's like, you know, maybe I could help somebody. Maybe somebody heard someone that week and they go to the suicide prevention club and they go and talk to John, the security guard. I don't know.
Right. Yes, and I'm going to come to you.
From what I hear from my high schoolers, they've already started to think about, you know, these young people are powerful, somebody else said. I think they've already begun to talk about having a suicide prevention.
They did.
Let's say. just want to commend the school district because I have to say, no one is prepared, fully prepared to ever, as a parent of a child that does commit suicide, as a parent that has a child who's good friends with somebody that did, principal, I walked in to get my girls on Friday morning, and I saw the horror in Mr. Murphy's.
I saw the horror in Mr. Murphy's face watching all of his young people, because they're his young people too, during many hours of the day. And I saw the horror of the teachers and everybody trying to give hugs, which may be all that anybody could offer at that time. I think we have to take away blame. It's the school district, it's the parent, it's the friends. Nobody knows. Everybody's trying to do the best they can, and I have to commend the teachers, whether as a former teacher, as a current substitute, the middle school and the high school, I know in particular, really are doing the best they can to enable these children. There's a lot on their shoulders as well. And nobody has complete answers. This isn't a math problem that we can come up with necessarily a definite solution.
Dr. Leahy, there's somebody there before, I think.
I'll come back.
Hi, okay. As a young person who attends Southside High School, I think it's really imperative for all of you to understand that I struggle with anxiety myself. And sometimes the hardest person to come to is your parents. It's just a fact. Sometimes you just don't want to tell them. It's disappointing. I don't know. That's just how some people feel. It's so important that you understand that your children are telling their friends. And that's why programs like the Challenge Day program that we had in the middle school was probably one of my favorite days, because guess what? I got to understand that people just like me are struggling. And it made me feel better to know that someone in my position is struggling. And that's something that I've emailed Mr. Murphy about, because I think that it's so important that we can implement something like that in high school, where we're going through pivotal moments, we're going through college, we're going through friend group changes. And that's something that you should have routinely. You need to understand that people are struggling just like you. And I know that that's helped me understanding. I've joined Context, which is like a literary club where people are really sensitive. And guess what? That actually helped me, because it made me realize that other people are sensitive too. And it's just something that I think you need to educate your kids on that too. There are programs in our school. Our school does a lot more than you think. We have so many clubs that are so open to all these people who are so sensitive. And if you advocate that to your children and broadcast it in that way, a huge change could happen. And I'm really passionate about it, because I know that I've been in a situation similar. And you know what? There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you really can get through everything you want to.
You're awesome. You're awesome. I just wanted to jump in and say one more thing. When we started the Dignity for All Students Act initiatives, one of the things that we used to say was, if you see something, say something. Right? They were on the posters on the wall, and we had pictures of our DACs, our Dignity Act coordinators, and who to go to if there's a bullying, or you're either a victim or you observe something. And it's kind of the same thing here. And that's the message we really have to get across to all of us. If you see something, say something. In the last couple of days, I've had emails from parents with suggested more articles to send out. I'm collating them now to add to the resources that we already have for parents, and we sent out in January, and we'll of course send out again. We want to hear, certainly from the students, from you, if you see someone in harm's way. It's really, really important. It's a really important takeaway from today, that you understand that as well.
Yes.
What can you share with us about social media, and social media in the sense that you read reports about kids playing games on social media, and the game, someone on the game urges them to take an action that would cause self-harm or even go to suicide. And I also want to add my thanks to the school administration for putting all this together, doing a terrific job with what is obviously a very difficult situation.
Well, I can tell you that there's main social media groups, starting with Facebook. They already have created systems where they look for, on their systems, they look for alarming things that actually immediately mobilize emergency services. So it's actually known for a fact that the increases in suicides have a lot to do with social media. They have already demonstrated that. So having said that, we're working with a lot of social medias that particularly that youth are engaging in as a way of trying to see what we can put some safeguards in, and also working on, legally, working on certain type of material not being available, being advertised. So some of that work is being done. We need to do a lot more of that work because we know social media is a very important mechanism in this process. Any other questions? Yes.
Before a few times, but the idea of advisory in high school, having people keep thinking, where do I go to? Who do I ask? Is there an adult, who's visible to the students to know during the day? I keep going back to that. If there was an advisory in the high school system with a small group that followed them for 4 years to understand that child and to maybe see differences in a child's behavior, they don't have to be the person to talk to, but they can be the person to direct them to somebody who can help them.
Just bring up I brought up the point before, and I've said it before a few times, about an advisory system in the high school, about small groups that meet with the children every day, follow them through 4 years, that they know the student. And this way, if a student has to go to somebody for help, that might not be the person to help them, but they would at least have somebody to go to steer them in the right direction. And I've mentioned it before, and I know it's giving up education time, but I think it would be valuable time spent for all the students on many different reasons.
So we're just going to take maybe one or two more short comments. We have a group waiting to use the auditorium. We were supposed to be gone by now, so if we could just one or two more comments.
I'm an educator, and one of the new buzzwords, which I thought was just a buzzword, is mindfulness. And I think it's an amazing practice, and I teach kindergarten, and 2 minutes, 3 minutes every morning, we sit and we do a mindfulness exercise, and it gives me the tools on ways to explain to the children on how they're feeling. One of the ways is like a snow globe, and you shake the snow globe, and the snow is all over, and I say, you might feel like that sometimes, but it's gonna settle. And then we teach them the exercises to get them to relax, but they have tools like that in first grade and second grade, and it takes 2 minutes. But no matter what, we're saying like they can go to a club or things like that, but we need to give them the tools on how to understand their mind from a very young age.
Right, thank you. I know this has been an initiative in the district for 2 years now, and we find it to be as effective an intervention as you stated. Okay, one more.
I just want you to think about PTSD here, because your students, your children, might not be coming to you, they might not be speaking out loud, they might not be sharing their feelings, and then years later, from my own experience, it can really come full circle. So look for those signs. You can go on a NAMI National Alliance on Mental Illness website and understand the symptomatic effects from PTSD. Okay?
Thank you.
I started by saying to you earlier, this is the first conversation. I think you are probably all very cognizant of the fact that we recognized early on in this entire process during the weekend that the word suicide needed to be part of the conversation, which is why we have Dr. Ben Elie here tonight. I hope you walk away and understand we love you, we love your children, and that's so much of what motivated us this past weekend, and John, this past weekend, to spend time with your children. You need to spend time with your children. We need to spend time with your children. One of the things that we learned over this past weekend, don't be afraid to allow them to spend time with each other. They need to grieve. They cried on each other's shoulders. A lot of the adults just kind of had to stand back and just be a referee to what was going on with your children, but they need to grieve. We understand that, and it's been very painful for us to watch, but nevertheless, I think that the fact that all of you parents have been here tonight speaks volumes about what this community is about to do. So again, let me just say where I began. This is the beginning of a conversation. Let me also end with something that Noreen said a few moments ago. If you see something, say something. Can't tell you how important that is for all of us. So again, my thanks to all of you for joining us tonight, and again for joining in this conversation.